So in my recent Fold 7 EDC video, I just showed off my mini laptop setup that I've been doing from time to time for simple use cases. But when actually using this more frequently, I found that there's actually a ton of hardware and software optimizations that I had to do to make this a much more usable experience for me when outside and also at home. So in this video, I want to show you guys my best tips and suggestions for using the Fold 7 as an actual laptop. I hope this video does help you out. If you're already doing this, I would love to hear your suggestions too, so I can improve my own setup. Alright, so starting off with what you need to get started, all you really need is your Fold 7 and keyboard. I highly recommend one that has a stand and trackpad integrated. This way you only need to bring these two things. Plus, when you don't have a trackpad and only rely on the touchscreen instead of a trackpad or a mouse, it's just not as precise. And it's going to be annoying when you have to go back and forth between your keyboard and the screen so often. The keyboard I'm using is basically full size with full size keys, which I think is super important for the typing experience. There's not that much travel, but I love how well built this thing is with USB-C charging for just a $20 to $30 price tag. I also love that the trackpad is attached and I don't need to bring a separate mouse. And I can also put it away when I don't need it. Even though this doesn't fold up exactly, it's still super compact and light, so it's really easy to pack in my bag. That integrated stand is limited to just one angle, but it is detachable so I can type from further away when I need to. That's basically everything you need for this setup. And if you're interested in any of these, the links will be down below. In terms of software, you really need to change up the settings in One UI as you can't run the more desktop-friendly DeX environment right on the inner display. Samsung made it so they can only run DeX when you're connected to an external display. So when you're outside or using the Fold 7 itself as a computer, you need to rely on One UI. Now, unfortunately, no matter what optimizations you make to One UI and Android, the mouse and keyboard experience on One UI is never going to feel as natural as a desktop OS like Windows or Mac. So there will be a bit of a learning curve in the beginning, and you're going to be restricted to some very basic usage scenarios. I use this setup for mostly web browsing, writing scripts, using ChatGPT or Gemini, replying to emails, and replying on Slack or other messaging apps. If you try to do more complicated things like video editing, coding, etc., it's just not going to be convenient at all. Right now, there's just not a lot of ways around that. Shortcuts and mouse support is very limited to a few apps. So even though it is really straightforward and easy to connect the keyboard to Android, there's going to be a lot of weird and unoptimized things to the whole user experience because this is still a touchscreen first experience. Okay, first, just to have the most horizontal screen real estate as possible, use your phone in landscape. This way, you can also have the Type-C port out on the side instead of being blocked off at the bottom. To make this even more convenient, make sure to turn on landscape for the home screen settings. Some apps are locked to portrait orientations. You can force these to landscape via labs, and you can also further optimize this on Good Lock. I also created a routine where whenever my keyboard was connected, it turns on auto rotate. This way, as soon as my keyboard is connected, everything rotates to landscape. I also have the taskbar to always on in the inner display for easy access to my essential apps. I do have my phone essential apps on the left side so that when it's closed, I can still get to my phone essential apps, but on the right side, I have my productivity focused essentials like the calendar, Gmail, and Chrome, plus some recent apps for quick app switching for the apps I was just using. I also do have a third-party pixel search app on the very left for super quick Google searches and for searching up apps really quickly. You can just prompt One UI's Finder with the Command F shortcut, but it's not as quick for Google searches or for opening apps either, so personally I do rely more on pixel search. Also, to make more efficient use of space, I use Good Lock to enable grid view for the recent apps menu. You get much more active apps and windows in one view instead of giant cards taking up the whole display. I also have the Edge panel enabled with a whole bunch of app shortcuts. With Good Lock, I have these open up by pop-up view by default to simulate a desktop-like environment where I can have a bunch of windows open at the same time. Now, for the pop-up windows, I do recommend setting it to always showing the top bar. It's like the top bar on Windows and Mac, makes these windows much easier to move around, maximize, and minimize. As for the trackpad cursor, make it a little bit bigger than the default size. Even though the inner display is 8 inches, it's still a small screen, so I like it at a more visible size. As for scrolling, most Bluetooth keyboards don't support precision scrolling, so you won't get that natural smooth scrolling. For most keyboards like this, you'll get a very robotic scrolling experience, and it jumps too much up and down when you use a mouse scroll or two-finger scroll. So I recommend making the scrolling speed as slow as possible. Also, using a trackpad and keyboard with Android is going to be a really janky experience at first, which I really had to learn through. So I wanted to clean up all my best shortcuts and essential optimizations so that it's easier for you guys when you start doing this. First off, use Command and / to get a full list of supported system keyboard shortcuts. You can pull this up anytime you're confused on any app or screen. This helps a ton when you forget them. And before using any of these shortcuts, make sure your command is actually your command key and your alt key is actually your alt key. I had to swap the mapping between these two keys in the settings for the keyboard I'm using. My keyboard was a bit confusing with this, so I had to swap the mapping between these two keys. Thankfully, system-wise, some of the most essential shortcuts are very similar to what's on Windows and Mac. You can do Alt-Tab for app switching, you can also do a 3-finger swipe up to see your recent apps, and use your arrow keys to go through them just like a regular PC. Control-C, V, X, A for your standard copy, paste, and select. Control-Z for undo. Control and space to switch your input language. I rely on this a ton since I use both Korean and English often. When you start going to multitasking, which is what I use a ton, that's where things start to be a little bit different. Control Command left or right arrow keys for side-by-side split screen multitasking. Control Command down to switch to pop-up view for the current app. Control Command up to put it back to full screen view. Then for browsing, Control T for new tabs and Control N for new windows are the same, so that's good. Using the multi-windows while browsing with pop-up view is one of the most useful things you can do since this is the closest part to a desktop-like experience. I basically use Word, Chrome, and an audio app like Spotify with this workflow more than anything. That's basically all I need during my script writing sessions where I just need some music while I research and write, so this setup is more than enough for me. By the way, when you're using the keyboard for typing, make sure you have autocorrect on. I know most people don't use autocorrect much on our laptops or desktop. You're going to get really good autocorrect here since it's optimized and learned from all the texting and emailing you've done on your phone. Then just as a tip, I found that having the performance profile switch to light mode is best for battery life. We're using the Fold 7 as a phone and as a computer, so I need to be efficient as possible with the battery. Why I use light mode instead of power saving mode is that the general performance and experience doesn't compromise much at all while saving you some battery life. It feels basically the same as a default profile and nowhere close to being as restrictive as power saving mode, so I do recommend it. That's basically everything I do to my Fold 7 to make it the most optimized laptop experience as possible when I'm outside. But at home, we have the monitor, so we can just use Samsung DeX for a more desktop-friendly environment. But even this needs some optimizations to make the experience much more usable. Before anything else, I highly recommend using a monitor with Type-C power delivery so your Fold can connect to the external monitor while also being charged at the same time. In the settings, make sure to use the highest resolution available. By default, only up to 1440p resolution is available. So head on over to Multistar from Goodlock to unlock 4K resolution if you want everything to look more high-res. This desktop-like DeX home screen has its own layout that's totally independent from your phone, so you should customize it to something as close to a desktop-like experience as possible. All windows can open in pop-up view, and starting with the upcoming One UI 8.5 update, DeX remembers the window sizes for all the apps you had open, so in that way it's getting a bit closer to how Windows and Mac feel like. And as a tip, I recommend maintaining small predictable window sizes. Since a lot of these Android apps aren't optimized for big screens, you don't want to use most of them in full screen or in a wide aspect ratio. I also recommend minimizing these apps in Windows instead of closing them so that apps open back up quickly and you can go back to them whenever. Now with DeX though, some keyboard shortcuts are a tiny bit different from some functions, so this is also another learning curve. Instead of the Control Command and arrow keys for playing with window sizes, you have to rely on other keys like the Command and the equal sign to maximize your current window or restore it back to the last size, Command and minus key to minimize it, Command and left bracket to snap left, and Command and right bracket to snap right. And you also have to do your app or window switching with Option and Tab. And when you do Command Tab, you can see there's multiple desktop supports. You can have a desktop for each workflow. Once you start using DeX, you'll realize that it's so much more freeing than just using One UI and the screen, because how DeX works is it behaves much more like a desktop OS. Now, even though this whole experience is cool, I actually don't find it practical at home. So I honestly just use the Fold 7 more often as a computer outside on regular non-DeX One UI than with DeX at home. I already have a MacBook Air and a Mac Mini at home, so I just don't have a reason to use this setup at home. But outside, when I don't want to bring a laptop and I want to carry a really light carry, this is a great setup for my simple productivity sessions. Now this whole experience would be even better if I had the trifold, but unfortunately it keeps going out of stock here in Korea, so I haven't been able to get it, and also rather wait for the second generation. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. If you thought this was helpful, I'd appreciate it if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Again, let me know in the comments if you have any other tips or suggestions when using the Fold 7 as a mini computer. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.